Hello, my name is Caleb Schaefer, and I'm with the Environmental Protection Agency, and I'm the Portland Harbor team lead in the Superfund program. I'm here to talk about a status update on material and transportation and disposal during the Superfund cleanup of the Portland Harbor Superfund site. The learning objectives of this presentation are one, to have a better understanding how material will be transported and disposed of, what it may look like as we get closer to the active cleanup. And two, create an informal list of community considerations, concerns, and priorities on material transportation and disposal that EPA may review as we look at the design documents. It's a real opportune time for us to take this into consideration because we're starting to reach a point in design where we are starting to see proposals for transportation and disposal for each of the 17 project areas within the Portland Harbor Superfund site. Just some definitions to help better understand this presentation. Capping and dredging, those are the main active remediation and active cleanup technologies that we will be doing to clean up the Portland Harbor Superfund site. Capping is the placement of clean material on top of contaminated sediment to create a barrier and prevent water and animals from contacting the harmful chemicals below. Dredging is actually physically removing that contaminated sediment from the river. Transload is transferring sediments from one mode of transportation to another. So it's simply like a staging area after you're dredging the material. You'll bring it to the shore and you'll transfer it from the barge to another form of transport like truck and rail. And that area where that activity occurs is called a transload. And finally, remedial action is just the umbrella term for the actual cleanup. So this pertains to any Superfund site, and the regulation says that CERCLA waste may only be placed in a facility operating in compliance with hazardous waste laws, that's resource conservation and under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or other applicable federal or state requirements. The specific record of decision for the Portland Harbor Superfund site selected off-site disposal for CERCLA waste. So our cleanup plan for this site selected off-site disposal. Our cleanup plan that we issued in 2017 also said that if during design more proximate or cost-effective disposal facilities emerge, EPA would support the use of these options to reduce the cost and environmental impact of the cleanup. What is the material that needs to be taken off site during the cleanup? Well, it consists of a number of things. The primary disposal is going to be for hazardous and non-hazardous contaminated sediment. And I want to pause here to kind of talk through what this means. Hazardous and non-hazardous are simply definitions that help distinguish between waste types based on their potential impact. So it's a designation that guides how the waste, once it's removed from the site, has to be managed and disposed of to protect people in the environment. So there are two types of main permitted landfills. There are subtitle C, or hazardous waste landfills, and that's for the highly contaminated material. And these are landfills that have extra safety precautions in place, like extra liners on the bottom, other extra safety procedures, versus subtitle D, or non-hazardous landfills. And that's where sediment that still needs to be removed from the site, but it's not dangerous enough that it receives the designation of hazardous, and that can go to a non-hazardous landfill or a subtitle D landfill. There'll also be a lot of debris. This is an urban area and a very historically active river, so there's a lot of material on the bottom that will also need to be removed. Things like logs, potential old ships, or boats, that type of thing. And finally, water. Water management as things get dredged up, decanting, dewatering of sediment, and managing that water is another material that needs to be planned for. So I talked a little bit about hazardous and non-hazardous material, and in the 2017 cleanup plan, we looked at the overall amount of waste that would likely be removed from the site as part of disposal. and 7% of that reached the contamination level where it would receive that hazardous designation, meaning it would have to go to a hazardous subtitle C landfill. The remainder, 93% approximately, was estimated to be of the non-hazardous designation and therefore could go to a subtitle D or non-hazardous landfill. The 2017 plan, and again, this presentation uses numbers from that cleanup plan that is issued in 2017. So these numbers will certainly be finalized as part of the conclusion of design once we've completed that before the cleanup. So these numbers are still approximate. But that 2017 cleanup plan approximated around 5 million tons of waste by weight or 3 million cubic yards of waste by volume that will need to be removed from the site and disposed of. Transportation and disposal are also the largest cleanup cost associated with the entire cleanup. And we're starting to see that actually with designs. Approximately 2/3 of the cost for Cathedral Park, for example, one project area is transportation and disposal. So that offsite transportation and disposal is a significant cost. And these numbers, when we talk about 5 million tons or 3 million cubic yards, that's the estimate over 13 years for the entire site. Again, that 13-year estimate is from the 2017 cleanup plan, and that number is also being finalized. So when you take the total volume that we estimated in 2017 in our cleanup plan, that 3 million cubic yards, what does that translate to give you a better idea of what it is in terms of volume? If all that material would be put on a barge, it would translate into roughly 2,000 barge loads. If all that 3 million cubic yards went by truck, it would translate to 200,000 trucks. And finally, if it were rail car, it would be 50,000 rail cars. Obviously, modes of transportation will be mixed and waste could take multiple modes of transportation, as we'll later learn in this presentation. But that just gives you a sense of what the perhaps overall volume would look like in each of these modes. We are going to play a 3-minute video from the Duwamish cleanup. I want to credit Kings County, who produced this video. I will speak over it as we play to kind of point out some things, but this gives you kind of a nice picture of what the cleanup may look like and will likely look like in Portland Harbor. So here you can see that yellow walled barge. We'll show it again a little later. This is actually an area where they are actively dredging. So that excavator arm is going down, and we'll see it go down into that portion of the river, pulling sediment out. So there it is within that contained area, and it's lifting contaminated sediment out and putting it in this yellow walled barge here. Now that area where it's pulling from has what's called a silt curtain, so that bright yellow line has a curtain going down, and that really helps with turbidity to ensure that the sediment that gets stirred up stays within that active working area, and doesn't for the most part move outside of that area. Obviously, there'll be water quality monitoring to ensure there's not turbidity that needs to be addressed outside of this portion where active remediation is occurring at the time. And the term for this area is a moon pool, where this active remediation is occurring. Here we see the excavator arm pulling from a distance, putting onto the barge. And there's a worker sitting next to the moon pool, obviously with the appropriate personal protective equipment that workers will need to wear when they're working and cleaning up the site. And now you can see a tug. That white tugboat there is actually pushing the barge. And the excavator arm going into the moon pool. And you can kind of see the amount, the water. These are typically watertight barges. So you have a lot of water going in there that obviously will need to be managed. a barge here moving around, or sorry, a tugboat moving around to the barge, and now the tugboat pushing the barge. So barges typically don't have power, and so tugboats help move them. And now we're on land. So this is the transload area. And you can see the barge on the right and the excavator arm taking it off of the barge, moving it onto land. And they would typically be moving it into a truck or a rail car. And so this is what the contaminated sediments looks like moving on to a different mode of transportation when it's come to land. Here you can see it sit drying the contaminated sediment. Barge. Obviously, the barge could go directly to the disposal site, but here we're showing it within a transload facility at the site, moving on to a different mode of transportation. And a worker, again, tying off the barge. So this hopefully gives a sense of kind of what the physical cleanup will look like, and maybe help illustrate some of the other concepts we'll be talking about. So volume wise, we talked about total volume, what it would look like. This kind of projects what it would look like in terms of what it would be per day. So there's fish window limitations of active work times within the river, and the main work window is 4 months. It's from July to October. So for those 4 months, every day for those 4 months, you would see if you took that 3 million cubic yards and translated into a daily amount, it'd be 2 barges a day, or 35 rail cars, or 130 trucks for those 4 months of the year for the 13 years of estimated time that the cleanup would occur. And what are the options of where it would go? Well, our cleanup plan in 2017 highlighted the landfills that are in the area. And so this map shows all of those options. They're all the yellow boxes, so you can see 4 yellow boxes here, and those represent the 4 landfills. There are 3 non-hazardous landfills, so that 93% that's estimated can go to Wasco, Roosevelt Regional Landfill, or Columbia Ridge Landfill. The one hazardous waste landfill where that 7% has to go is Chemical Waste Management, which is also located at Arlington. The 2 green triangles are 2 transload facilities, so areas that can be moved from barge to truck to take the remaining journey. So there is a transload in the Dalles at the Wasco facility, and that services just the Wasco landfill. So any material going to that transload facility has to go to the Wasco landfill. Material on barge that moves upriver through the Columbia going to the port of Morrow can go to any landfill, and typically the route we would take would be to Columbia Ridge or to Chemical Waste Management. And so the 3 options for transportation are highway transport, trucks directly to the landfill. So obviously we hope to have transload facilities within the Superfund site. And you could see on the left of the map there, that red outlined area is the Portland Harbor Superfund site. So within that area, we hope to have 1 or 2 transload facilities. And so that barge could move to truck within the Superfund site, and highway transport from truck to any one of these landfills can occur. Second, that barge can actually stay within the Superfund site, move down the remainder of the Willamette River, take a right and start to go upstream in the Columbia and go to one of those transload facilities before it's then moved by truck to the remainder of the journey. Or finally, it can go by rail. And different rail lines, whether it's BNSF or UPR, serve either Roosevelt Regional or Columbia Ridge landfill. So those represent the options. Now we're going to talk about in detail each of those 3 options. So back to the first option, the trucking route. So the trucking route options would to the subtitle D landfills, the non-hazardous waste landfills, are Wasco and Columbia Ridge landfill and Roosevelt Regional Landfill. And so you can see here it is routes in red, truck routes going to all of those. It's approximately 100 miles from the Superfund site to the Wasco County landfill, and it is approximately 150 miles to either Roosevelt or the two Arlington, Columbia Ridge, or Chemical Waste Management landfills. So that kind of gives you a sense of distances and driving routes. Again, that one truck route to the hazardous Subtitle C facility is to the chemical waste management facility in Arlington. The second option we highlighted our barge plus truck route. And so you can see here the blue shade is that blue barge route leaving the site and going up the Columbia River and then going to one of the two transload facilities. So the Port of Morrow, the Tidewater Terminal, or the Burnett barge line, the Dalles transload. And from there, it would be a truck route to from the Burnett barge line. It's approximately 10 miles to the Wasco County landfill. If it goes to the Tidewater terminal, it's roughly a 40-mile truck trip to the Columbia Ridge landfill or the chemical waste management landfill. It's approximately a 24-hour barge ride one way to get up to the top here, so a significant amount of time too by barge to take this route. And then finally, the potential rail routes, and you can see here in the dark burnt orange color, their subtitle D facilities, the non-hazardous can either go rail to Columbia Ridge landfill. And so Columbia Ridge is served by UPRR, Union Pacific Railroad, and Roosevelt is served by BNSF Railway. So there's a rail line that goes to Roosevelt from using BNSF. And so these are the two rail route options. And so each project area, each of the 17 project areas is obviously going to evaluate each of these options and develop a transportation and disposal plan. And now is the time when we expect to start seeing these transportation and disposal plans, which is why we're talking about it here and interested in your input as we review these. And this just presents an analysis by one project area. This is the Willamette Cove project area, talking about what are the options available to them, looking at the options that we've outlined. And so by truck, they can go to any one of the landfills, and this is just for the non-hazardous waste, not the hazardous. So they can go to Columbia Ridge, Wasco, or Roosevelt, and it shows the mileage to each one of those from their project area. They can go by barge, and it shows the truck mileage 173 and 94 plus the barge, the 173 and 94 plus then the truck mileage of 37 or 6 to the two landfill options. Roosevelt is not an option for them because it would require going up to the Umatilla Bridge to cross over. So it'd just add a lot more going farther upriver the Columbia to allow them to cross by truck after the barge unloads in the Port of Morrow. And finally, the rail option, Columbia Ridge is really the only viable option. And that's because Roosevelt, while it is served by rail, it would require them to work with two different rail companies. So transfer a load from essentially BNSF to UPRR. And so gives a good example of what project areas are looking at when they look at what their options are to dispose at these landfills. What would a kind of an ideal scenario look like in terms of transportation? And this presents the barge option, filling up on the barge within the landfill. So the top at 12 o'clock in the slide here, filling up the site with contaminated sediment, transferring it to rail at the transload facility within the site. And from there, once it's on rail, moving to the landfill, unloading at the landfill onto a truck to then be disposed of, and then returning back to the site. So this represents the whole cycle. If ideal scenario would time-wise for this to be done would be 7 days. So it's a significant amount of time to fill up a barge, to then transport it, and to move the cars back to the site so they can be filled up again. So a significant amount of time involved in moving this material as well. What are some of the challenges? Certainly, timing is important. These landfills and transfer stations aren't open, and we estimate during the work window of 4 months that there could be operations around the clock 24 hours a day. So obviously, there are constraints there when materials can go to these disposal facilities. Capacity limitations. There's a lot of material being generated, and whether or not a landfill can take that particular load on a particular day is obviously another consideration. Barges availability. Barges are obviously, there are certain resources that are limited. Availability of truck drivers. And so truck drivers are typically independent, and so they own their own trucks. So if any one project area has 25 trucks that they're hoping to arrive at the project area in that day, they have to work with each of those independent truckers to coordinate them and hopefully have all of them show up on that day to be able to move the material. And then there are special waste considerations, designation of the waste, characterization of the waste that obviously needs to occur before a landfill is going to accept that waste. So it's working with the landfills on characterizing that waste. Emissions are also an important factor to consider. And so here you can see a table and the three options we've talked about on the left, first column, the barge, truck, and truck option, truck only or rail only, and the total CO2 tons that would be generated. So this is assuming all the waste, that 3 million cubic yards over 13 years, just an estimate of what it would entail in terms of particulate matter and CO2 emissions. And so you can see here the first two columns after the transportation scenarios show that in total, and then it's broken down by transportation type to kind of compare roughly what the emissions would be for each one of those options. So EPA obviously as we review these transportation and disposal plans is considering various things. Remedial design parties that are developing them are also considering various factors when they're evaluating options. And some of these include just the time to complete the cleanup. These routes can take different time periods, and that obviously is a consideration. The goal is to clean up as quickly as we can. Disruption of local businesses and use of things like local roads, obviously another consideration that needs to be factored in. Equipment and facility access and availability, and we talked a little bit about that. And then certainly the impacts and benefits to cleanup to the community and the environment are a consideration as these disposal and transportation plans are developed. And certainly cost is another factor that is being considered. So these just really represents some of the considerations, and we are interested to hear what would be a priority to community members, so EPA can take that into account as we review these. And so your input is important, and I'll now turn it over to Laura Knudsen to talk a little bit about how we are going to encourage and accept and review that input.
Give me one moment. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. One moment. So the way that we're going to be collecting feedback, like Caleb mentioned, is via a tool called Mural, which some of you may be familiar with. But for those of you who aren't, I'm just going to share my full screen here. One moment. This is the tool. So we'll include a link in the description below this video. The link also will be most likely on our website, our EPA portal on our website, and in the emails that we'll send out, but also our third-party neutral facilitation team, Triangle, sends emails out for the collaborative. So that link will be to this website, will be in there. And the first thing that you want to do is when you click on that link is you'll get a page that looks like this, which is a little confusing because you neither need to create an account nor do you need to actually log into Mural. You can click this underneath here, which says enter as a visitor. And that's all you need to do in order to provide informal feedback. So I'm going to click that. It does offer you the option to just have a random name. So if you would like to be anonymous, in this case, Visiting Bird is mine, but you could remain anonymous if you want, and you can put anything that you want here. Or if you want to actually write your name or your organization, which in my case, I will do that because I'm okay sharing that. I'm going to put Laura Knudsen and then EPA, and then you just click enter as a visitor. And so this is Triangle, our third-party neutral facilitation teams tool. I'm just showing this. And so this will show you the Mural, which is basically just a big board electronically that you can add your feedback to. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And just to remind everyone, the purpose of this Mural is to create an informal list, like Caleb said before, of community considerations, concerns, and priorities on material transportation disposal so that our EPA technical teams may review those as they look at the design documents. And so we are looking for feedback. Anything that you would like to put on here or share with folks, feel free to share this link or have a little party where you provide feedback together by Monday, November 3rd. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me or the Triangle facilitation team, Danny and Ben. So the way, there are some tips on the right here, but I'm just going to show you in real time. Gives you some more tips. So you can use your scrolling device to scroll out or zoom in. Also down here, there's you can do it manually. So you can also click down here to really blow things up a bit more so you can see things better. And then you can just click and drag to go to different sections. So what we've done is we've actually populated already some of the feedback to date. So if you have additional feedback to date, you can put it in here. If you anywhere you put it is fine. So don't get too hung up on the columns. Feel free to do whatever you'd like. If you have additional questions or general comments, I see someone already has put something in there. Feel free to add them there. But let's pretend that you want to add some additional feedback. So we're going to zoom in, and maybe you also want to see some of the feedback we've already received. So some of the feedback that we've received so far is consideration, for instance, of emergency situations. If the waste is being transported, you know, what happens if a truck spills or a rail car gets derailed. So that's helpful for us to know too, so we can use that and think about that and also get some answers to those questions. The way that you would provide feedback, if you would like to add additional feedback to anything on here, is you come to one of these sticky notes, you can zoom in on it, and then you can just double click, and that will allow you, if you double click quickly, to add text. Also, if you don't want to double click, you can right click and click edit text is the other way you can do it. And so then you can put feedback, you know, and you can put your name if you would like. EPA is that I have more questions. So I'm just making something up, obviously, but then you can just click anywhere outside, and that is the feedback will be put in. If you, for some reason, enter this and there's no more sticky notes, I'll mention too, if you then want to undo what you just did, you can go up here and click undo. And so, or you can redo, undo and redo. I'm going to undo it because I'm not going to put that feedback in. But that's the other thing I'll mention on that. Also, if you would like to add a sticky note, you can come over here, and there's right underneath here is sticky notes. You can click this one, which will pop up another sticky note that you can then drag wherever you want. You can make it a little bigger, and you can do the same thing. You can double click inside or right click edit text, and you're good to go. The other thing I'll mention, if you would like to take advantage of this, no pressure, just use this tool however you would like. But if there's a piece of feedback you really liked, so let's say you really are concerned about this emergency situations one, what you can do is you can drag one of these stars over, and you can put it by it, I suppose. It's a little hard to put it over it, but you can put it next to it. And that helps us show, or it helps us see some of the pieces of feedback that resonate even more with folks. Just kind of gives us a general idea. So I think those are the main pieces. Caleb, since I've gone through this, do you have any questions about this tool or additional things you'd like me to demonstrate? Okay.
No, thanks, Laura.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.